counting continues in the European Union elections, and we're starting to see the first seat projections. But what is absolutely clear is that Nigel Farage's Brexit party is storming to victory, riding a wave of anger at the failure of Prime Minister Theresa May to take Britain out of the EU. Now, considering this was an election the UK wasn't meant to be in, is it any surprise that UK citizens have voted this way? As we anticipated here on Friday night, ahead of her press conference, Theresa May has finally announced the date she will stand aside as Prime Minister. Joining me live tonight from the UK to go through the results and the ongoing Brexit chaos is leading Tory Brexiteer, founder of Conservative Home, a centre-right political blog in the United Kingdom, and former editorial page editor of The Times, Mr. Tim Montgomerie. Tim, great to have you on the show. I'm delighted you can come to us tonight after what's been a very momentous weekend for Britain. It looks like voters have deserted the two major parties, the Conservative Party and obviously Labor. I mean, I didn't think that the Lib Dems could come back. Well, they seem to have picked up all the Remainers, and the Brexit Party absolutely has got what I would consider the base of the old Tory party, who very much want Britain out of the EU. Where to now?
Well, in a way, Peter, it's a marvellous example of democracy in action. I think the main parties, certainly the British Conservative Party, perhaps thought that they could fail to deliver Brexit and their supporters would stay with them, stay loyal. But actually, the result for the Conservative Party is worse than even I imagined. The Conservative Party have fallen to single digits, about 9% in the popular vote. This is the worst result for the Conservatives since the early 1800s. And it's a real example that if you do take voters for granted, if you do make promises and then fail to keep them, we live in an age where loyalty to party is gone. People believe in certain things. Brexit's a very important thing for lots of people on both sides of the debate, for or against. And voters have moved majestically, really. It's a powerful illustration of the power of democracy.
Well, now that we know that Theresa May will depart the scene, and it has been a death of 1,000 cuts, I have to say, the way that she has limped on and survived again and put the vote up to Parliament, lost it, told to resign, limped on, survived again. But she's now going. What's been the fallout, or what will be the instructive lesson coming out of this weekend's show of force for the Brexit Party for the Tory leadership contest, for the way that it's going to play out between the various candidates for Prime Minister, Tim?
I think the main lesson you'll see, I think, that certainly the Conservative Party MPs and members will draw, is that I was someone, for example, who've always voted Conservative all my life, but I voted for the Brexit Party in this election, and I did so because I wanted to punish the Conservative Party. I think the Conservative Party knows, as it seeks to find a successor to Theresa May, that unless it chooses someone who is going to make Brexit happen, the results that we've seen over this weekend won't just be a one-off, but potentially the Conservative Party's very existence, not just its grip on power, but its very existence is in danger. So I think we will see much more commitment, I certainly hope so, from the leadership candidates vying to succeed Theresa May, to be true Brexiteers rather than the faux Brexiteers that we've seen in recent times.
Well, tell me a little bit more about who's in the race. We all know in Australia, obviously, Boris Johnson very well. He doesn't look like he's scared of the no Brexit option. I've argued from day one this should have been on the table. If you take no Brexit off any negotiation table, then you can be absolutely sure they've got you over a barrel from the get-go. He's open to a no Brexit. And it's very clear that we saw comments from Philip Hammond, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Treasurer in Australian terms over the weekend, saying that no Brexit would mean that the Tories would lose a vote of confidence on the floor of the Parliament, as if, I guess, a way to try and shepherd them back into this convoluted negotiation that's been May's downfall. I absolutely think that they've got to have no Brexit on the table. What can you tell us about the various contenders, Tim?
Well, Boris Johnson, as you say, Peter, is definitely the favourite. And he has said that he will respect the new deadline of leaving the European Union. Theresa May promised again and again that we would leave at the end of March. Obviously, we're now in April, May time. June is coming. October's the new deadline. And Boris Johnson has said we will have to leave, and he will commit to leaving at the end of October. There is another candidate on the other wing of the Conservative Party, Rory Stewart, who's just been promoted to be our International Development Minister, who is saying that he would not serve under a Boris Johnson leadership if Boris Johnson were to win. And there are enough Conservative MPs that potentially could sabotage a Boris Johnson leadership or any candidate who stood on a no-deal Brexit ticket, basically saying that we'll leave the European Union regardless of whether we have a deal or not. So Rory Stewart is at the opposite end to Boris. Most candidates are more or less in the same position as Boris, wanting to commit to some form of exit from the European Union by the end of October, regardless of what the European Union negotiates.
I looked at the results in Scotland and there was a high vote to the SDP. Now, they are predominantly a Remain party. The Brexit party didn't do as well in Scotland as it might have liked. Is that a worrying sign that we're going to have a reprisal of this idea that Scotland goes it alone?
Well, the overall election result is, yes, the Brexit party have done incredibly well. They have topped the poll, but if you add up all of the parties that backed Remain or backed Brexit, you've got essentially a nation that's still about as divided as it was 3 years ago when the referendum took place. We remain a 50-50, very divided, very polarised nation. And although we're 50-50 across the UK as a whole, as you rightly focus upon, Scotland is much more of a Remain nation. And so the SNP, the Scottish Nationalist Party, that want to take the Scotland out of the United Kingdom, I think they feel that these results give them some encouragement that one day that their dream of taking Britain out of taking Scotland out of Britain could come true. I think it's double-edged, though, for them, because there are also a lot of Scots who've seen how messy it is to take Britain out of the EU, to end a 40-year relationship. Well, the United Kingdom has been together for 300 years, and so taking Scotland out of the UK could be even messier and more complicated problem. So although Scotland is a Remain nation, there are all sorts of other lessons to be drawn from this very difficult divorce that may actually keep Scotland inside the UK.
Someone put it to me, you know, watching everything in Britain play out from the European continent, it's given rise to a range of other parties themselves who want a Brexit of their own. In France, we see the rise of Le Pen, we see Salvini, in Italy, and obviously now Farage. So there's, you know, it's not as homogenous, the view of the EU, as perhaps it has been in the past. We saw with Nigel Farage doing well. We saw the Lib Dems do well. They're picking up places, you know, Islington, for example, Jeremy Corbyn's sort of constituency. I mean, everything's in a state of flux. Does it tell you, out of all of this, that there is worrying signs going forward for the EU such that they won't countenance an extension on the 31st of October? Do you think that they will really hold to that date and force Britain out, or hold Britain to account, deal or no deal? And if that's the case, what does it mean for negotiations, Tim?
Well, I actually think the best chance of Britain leaving the European Union without a deal is potentially if the European Union says, we've had enough with you, Britain. You know, you've been trying to leave the European Union all this time. You keep failing to vote for any kind of agreement. You're absolutely gridlocked. And a country like France, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, came close to this previously, but was overruled by the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, just sort of said, we've had enough with you, go. And in a way, that sort of European Union running out of patience with the UK and ejecting us without a deal is more likely than the British Parliament accepting no deal, because the British Parliament remains incredibly divided, with a majority probably in favour of remaining if they had that option. So you're right to focus, Peter, on the European dimension of this, and a close eye on what President Macron and other European leaders of other European capitals are saying would be wise for anyone trying to understand this continuing drama.
No, we're all trying to organise it and watch it and you know, look at the analysis from here. It's not easy. I don't suspect it's any easier where you are, Tim. Thanks very much for your insights tonight.